So, welcome to Series 3, Episode 3 of Entangled Discussions. Today we talk about readying business for Quantum 2.0 with Quantum London. So it's always a pleasure to speak with fellow quantum community builders, especially those such as Emanuele Colonnella and Anahitas Zardoshti, who are doing such fantastic work to help bridge the gap between the lab and the city. So with two guests that are tackling the implications of the second quantum revolution from both a business and a community building standpoint, the talk promises to bring new and interesting dimensions to the fore. So welcome Anna, welcome Em.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And obviously, as it's Entangled Discussions, this is an interactive talk. So I can see people are already making use of the chat box. Please continue to do so. We will be having audience participation, and you guys can entangle with our guests. So as this is our first individual talk with two individuals, it would be great if we could start off by hearing a little bit more about your backgrounds, yourself, and Quantum London, and how that's come about.
Sure, maybe I can start. I work in insurance. That's the highlight. In the sense, I have a varied background. It's a mix of technology and business. These were my studies. And I had my own startup at some point in the marketing space. And I ended up in insurance somehow. And over time, kind of fell in love with it. There's much more than meets the eyes. It feels from outside a very boring industry, old-fashioned. But it's also an area where there is a lot to change and innovate. And that's what I do for a living. I work in innovation for an insurance company. And we're trying to push the limits of what's possible. So very passionate about new ideas and innovation in general. And I will let Anna introduce herself, and then maybe you can do a bit on Quantum London, how it came about and what we're trying to achieve.
So hi everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Anahita and I also work in the insurance industry. So I graduated from physics at university and I joined Lloyd's of London on a graduate scheme. So I've sort of been rotating across different parts of the insurance industry and trying to see where I fit in, what I want to do. And one of the things I came across as well was the innovation team. And through the innovation team, really, I got interested in quantum computing because I was working on a report to do with the impacts of quantum computing on insurance. And so that's what really brought me into this very exciting world. And well, I'll let Em say later about how I basically got into contact with Quantum London and joined that community. But yeah, so I'm currently on another of my rotations. I work within the insurance market and I'm working in data and analytics. And yeah, that's my background so far.
And I think it's really great to see how quantum is sort of touching all so many different industries and arenas, and particularly something as well established and important as insurance. So coming from that background, how did Quantum London start?
So it started in 2019 when we were still allowed to go out, and it started in a pub basically. The idea comes from Paolo Cuomo, who's the other part of the organization, and he's done something similar in the insurance space, in the InsurTech. So people from the UK might be familiar with Instack London. Paolo was a co-founder of that organization, and I think over his career has always been passionate about bringing new technologies to the business. So it was his idea, and I joined soon after, and we really started in a pub. It was just a bunch of people. It was a message on Meetup. Oh, there's this thing called quantum computing who wants to bounce some ideas. So we got together a few times, a group of 10, 15 people, just messing around with ideas. And in front of a pint, we soon realized that, we had many more questions than answers. So we started thinking, well, if you want to get some of those questions answered, we should start bringing in experts and explaining us what this is about. And our objective from the start was really to look at what are the business implications of quantum computing. The pub happened to be in the city, a lot of business people there, so trying to understand for their own businesses, when is this coming and what does it mean for us. So we brought in speakers to answer some of the questions, and we started having some webinars. Sorry, we started with physical events. We had a couple again in the city, but then lockdown kicked in, so we moved into virtual events. So at the moment we do a couple of things. We do webinars where we bring in experts, and over time we are now trying to have some verticals. We cover finance, we cover security, so we try to specialize those sessions. And we then do some informal conversations, more like the one we're having tonight, where we get together, we bounce ideas, and we have open forum discussions where everyone contributes to the conversation. And it's a good mix of people. You got some people from the academia, some people from the business, some more technical people, some less technical people, novice, more expert. We proud ourselves in the sense that our community is very open, but also there's no silly questions, right? It's very informal. And that's probably something which differentiates us a bit from other communities. First, we are not super technical. We get to the technical side from time to time, but it's more around, what are, again, the business implications of quantum computing. And also, there is no silly questions. And the third thing we do, so is the events. Hopefully we will do more in person for those who are in the UK in the next future. With the conversations, we call them staff dish. And then the third thing is the coding community. Sorry. So for those who wants to get their hands dirty, they get together twice a month and they can practice. There's a couple of leaders in the community who are more advanced and they teach other people how to program. Anna can give you more detail around that because she's leading that stream. But yeah, that's really how it came about. A bunch of people trying to get some answers, and then from there it grows into, I think we are now counting 4,000 people across different meetup groups. So yes, snowballed kind of from there.
And I think it's having worked in the city for many years, it's reassuring to know that so much business is still done in the pub, especially around the Lloyd's market, so which is quite familiar. So, and Anahita, from your side, so it would be interesting, I think, to hear your journey with Quantum London as well, and a little bit about the events or activities that you're heading up.
Definitely. So as I mentioned, I joined Quantum London a year after I think it was formed in the summer of 2020. I essentially was working on this report to do with how quantum computing is going to impact our industry, the insurance industry. And so somebody put me in contact with Emma and Paolo saying there are these two guys in the insurance industry who run Quantum London. And so why don't you get into contact with them? And they invited me along to one of their roundtable discussions. And to be honest, I was quite scared, thinking, I don't know much about this field. They said, come along and ask some questions. And I thought, how can I ask questions about this? But immediately when I joined that session, it was quite evident that this was a sort of a safe space to come and explore and learn about this technology. You don't have to be an expert. There are experts there, which is fantastic. And they do spend their time and they do come and contribute, which is incredible. But what is really nice and refreshing is that you can come from sort of any industry, even if you just want to learn how it might impact your industry. If you work in pharmaceuticals, if you work in automotive, you might be interested in understanding what this technology is going to do. And so it's a space to come and talk, to contribute. So I became, really close to the group. I was attending every event, and soon after I joined to run a few of the streams and joined the group with Emma and Paolo. It's been a really incredible journey. I think, as well as just from a very personal kind of selfish point of interest, just wanting to learn about this, it has been really exciting to see the community grow as well, and to, grow organically through the time that we've been there. And that's down to people coming, contributing, and being open and sort of interacting with these spaces. And I think that's been a really incredible thing we found in lockdown. And I don't know. I'm sure it would have been incredibly successful. You know, as you say, a lot of business is done in the pub still, so I'm sure it would have been incredible and a completely different atmosphere. But I must say that being in lockdown and having to be virtual has been sort of a blessing in disguise in a way for community building like this. We've had access to such an international audience, which now seems unfathomable to lose, and we definitely wouldn't want to lose even if things started opening up. And you know, we need to think a bit more about how do we integrate the virtual community, and if we are going to host physical events, our physical community as well. Because we've just been able to have access to people all around the world, and that's been super exciting. And it's been a fun journey. You know, I don't think a lot of people might have been logging after work at 6 p.m. to so many quantum computing sessions if they had other things going on. And I'm personally glad I did, and I'm personally glad I have invested this time and joined this community and been part of it. So yeah, it's been great. And on the streams that we're leading, so as Em mentioned, we've got the roundtables, which comes from the German word roundtable, Stammtisch, and we have the webinars. And so the coding sessions, they're essentially community-led coding sessions. Again, you know, I, for example, have no formal experience in coding, but we know from community members, we have, for example, Anuj, who's one of our community members, who's, you know, brilliant. He's done a lot of different kind of courses in quantum computing coding, and so he comes and he talks through the Qiskit textbook with us and runs our session, and we found it to be a really incredible space. And people pop up every week. We've got new faces who say, oh, I want to have a stab at this, see how it goes. And there's no discrimination between how advanced or beginner you need to be. You can come in, listen, ask any questions you want. So yeah.
And I think, you know, to have 4,000 members within a couple of years, coming from a sort of a non-quantum background is really impressive. And it's lovely to see actually that you mentioned, you know, it's kind of the safe space, and there's no silly questions, and everyone engages, because that seems to be quite a theme across the quantum landscape. So it's nice to see that same ethos is at play within the interactions with business, and particularly in the city as well. So that's really great. And obviously we sort of you know, the pandemic, something that has I think obviously it's affected us all, but I think there's certain things when it comes to community building been able to do otherwise. It would be really interesting to sort of see how that develops, and what format that takes moving forward, and for the audience as well. So both our guests are on LinkedIn, as is Quantum London. So, you know, reach out. They've got some great stuff happening, and sort of working quite closely with entangled positions and entangled discussions on future events. So you know, please do get in touch regarding that. And for the people that are here, obviously, you guys are doing, you know, really great work to help the quantum community and bring it together with business. What can the quantum community do to help you guys?
Well, I can tell you my personal motivations for getting involved. So to me, well, I'm very curious, as a very curious person in general. So always been looking at what's new, what's coming. You know, it's not a coincidence that I work in innovation. I think that's you know, my passion is led me there one way or the other. So for me, you know, these two folds. One is, you know, giving back, you know, by building the community and bringing people together, something, you know, which really, you know, motivates me. And then it's also a cheeky way for me, you know, to get in touch with a lot of experts, people otherwise I will not be able to get in touch with. So it's a kind of a fast tracking into learning about, you know, quantum computing. You know, it's a journey. We always feel we are at the start. You know, there's so many amazing people we come across, and we feel like, oh, there is so much there. But yeah, for me, what has given to me, well, fueled my passion of, you know, bringing people together, but also it's been a great way for me to learn. That's one of the reasons why, you know, keep getting involved and want to do even more with it.
Yeah, so you mentioned obviously you guys have got a background within insurance. You mentioned security, for example. Is Quantum London focused on specific industries? Is it something that's evolving with new industries? Is it the sort of holistic view? Where would you say the sort of sweet spot and the future growth is for you guys?
So I think in Quantum London we've got quite a broad range of topics that we do discuss. Our sort of mission is to define the business impact of quantum computing, and that spans over different industry verticals. And what we've been trying to do recently is create more focused groups, rather than discussing all of this in one platform, creating, for example, groups for specific industries. We've recently ran specific webinars on quantum finance, and so we've been looking into that a lot, but our aims are to keep this broad, to keep this broad but narrow in on specific segments, and sort of for people who are interested, they can log on to that and have more of a look at that part. But and I'll let expand on this, but security has been something that we are all very interested in, because for the insurance industry specifically, whilst quantum computing is going to bring about incredible advancements, and it will provide us with enhanced machine learning capabilities, possibly things like weather simulation, things that the insurance industry can benefit from. We're possibly not the first industry to be an adopter, since there's not that need, for example, in banking, where where an advancement in an algorithm might lead to profits quite immediately. You don't see that in insurance. So the focus in the insurance industry right now, as it stands, is more on the threats of quantum computing. So that is a sector that we do focus on, this idea of it being able to crack encryption. But I'll let speak about this, because I know he's very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, no, just to comment on Anna's point, clearly, the first people were insurance people born in the city, but then from there he expanded to other industries. At the moment, the key areas are, the finance space, just because there's so much happening there. So, it's impossible to avoid it. We do speak with some insurance associations, from time to time. So that's something we keep, because we are involved in insurance, right? So by the nature of our professions, we do have involvement there, and we do speak there. And then, yes, the other one is security. It's a mix of, it's a topic which is close to, my heart, and Paolo is an operations person, so it's important for him. So these are the three streams, but we are agnostic. We want to look around the entire spectrum, and yeah, but, the plan is to do more of these verticals and looking at more industries over time.
But if I could just also add to your question of how can our community members help us that you asked before, I think one of the great ways is, we're not experts, obviously, in all fields. And so it would be great if somebody had expertise, or they knew people in a specific topic, for example, whether that be the automotive industry, the pharmaceutical industry, to just reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to maybe organize a few events, or see how we can go forward and exploring this. And if you have some contacts or names, we can definitely provide the platform, provide the sort of engagement with the community to take that forward. So that would be very helpful. We always love it when somebody messages us, hey, I'd be interested in exploring this, and then we can see how we can go forward.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's great to see these initiatives popping up and really becoming sort of successful ventures. And one thing that I think is interesting is, across the obviously different businesses have different use cases and so on. And there's a general theme that no one's quite sure exactly how things will take their own industries. And by nature, obviously, insurance involves mitigation and risk. And you mentioned the sort of the defensive side of the Quantum 2 revolution. But I'd be interested to understand if you see any sort of offensive or positive aspects that can really come in to revolutionize the insurance sector. Because I remember, from being in the city, it wasn't too long ago that everyone was walking around with paper under their arm, saying that that they couldn't change that at all. And I think that the chance for evolution is there. It'd be interesting to know where you see that the best use cases being.
I'll let Anna cover this one. She's published a fantastic paper a few months ago talking about that. So.
Well, I think for the insurance industry, the benefits that we can get out of quantum computing would probably be around things like risk simulation. So currently in insurance, capital modeling is a big part of how we model the risk from catastrophe events. So whether that be, for example, hurricanes or earthquakes, simulation models around to see what the losses are and to look at, whether you're going to, for example, be insuring a lot of different properties in the same area and what the risk of that might be. So, aggregation risks. And so any sort of tool that would let you do that on a larger scale with more data points is obviously going to be incredibly helpful. I think something that I've come across, but I'm not sure, and I'm sure somebody who's much more of an expert would know about this, is weather simulation, whether that would be something that's possible. But if we're able to very accurately simulate weather systems, then that's a huge benefit and sort of could be a killer application for the insurance industry. You could know exactly when a hurricane was hitting or when a tornado was going to come about, and so that would be able to, you might have already insured the property, so there's not much you can do, but it could help a lot with mitigation and with warning systems and safety and being able to mitigate the loss in that sense. And then I think the other point is that with insurance, like a lot of industries, data is key, and so the more data you have, the better. And things like Internet of Things devices, sensors, tiny sensors, we have to see a lot of startups now, for example, working on collecting data through these kind of nanosensors that are maybe put into cargo shipments, where they can track, for example, if food is going off, or, with the vaccines, for example, one of the Lloyd's of London insurers, they had they came from the innovation hub at Lloyd's, and they went on to create these sensors that could, for example, see the conditions in the containers that were going to be transporting vaccines around the world. And if one of those sensors, for example, showed that the temperature dropped below a level that was not good for the vaccines, it could tell the insurer, and so you could, for example, be able to know which one of those had which one of those supplies had gone off or wasn't usable. And so any information like that is very key, but the problem is the more information you have, the harder it is to process, and so quantum computing could be an incredible tool in that sense. And then of course any sort of machine learning algorithm, but similar to a lot of other industries, whether that could be used in fraud analytics, it could be used in predictive analytics for insurance, again, could be incredibly helpful. But I would just say that in terms of the insurance industry, I do personally see it being maybe a slightly later adopter of the technology. I could be completely proven wrong, but I think the business case for it isn't as strong as, for example, when what we see in banking and that industry, where, as I said, using quantum computing could really translate into profits and where in that industry you're anyway looking at very marginal gains over your competitors to make these large profits, whereas it's not as similar in the insurance industry. And so the focus a lot larger focus might go into how quantum computing could help. Not only it's a threat to breaking encryption systems, but also quantum algorithms could help us secure our data a lot more. So that could be a big field that insurance companies are interested in, of maybe seeing policyholders implement better encryption protocols.
There is also a more pragmatic element, talking about, can we cover quantum as, can we develop insurance product from quantum computing, like, protecting the hardware or, protecting the cyber risks related to quantum, right? There's also that aspect, there's always emerging risks in the insurance space, and quantum is, something we look at in terms of, it's an insurable element there we can look at.
Yeah, and it is, I think within any industry, it would be interesting to see the things that no one quite expects that come up as well. So I think that's fascinating, and obviously the audience has started to contribute as well. So Cecilia has a question. Cecilia, would you like to grab the mic, or?
Sure. So I'm curious, in your space, how are you tracking the innovations that are happening in quantum computing? I'm sure if you want to know what's happening for insurance purposes, is it mostly academics or are there companies that are leading the innovations in it? And if so, could you name some of the major players?
I have a simple answer to that, which is Google newsletters. You can set up the alerts. So that's where I got my daily dose of quantum is, this alert. So I got the news, there's a couple of great newsletters around there. The Quantum Daily is a really good one. So we don't do academic. I think we're more interested in what's happening in the market, who are the key players, what's happening, who's merging with who's talking to who. So there's a couple of newsletters there. The Quantum Daily is a good one. I'm terrible with names. Anna, please help me. The one from Sergio Gago is also a fantastic one. It's a weekly one. And then there is also the great report from a gentleman in the US called DWave. Has built this quantum report, which he issues from time to time. And we hosted him at one of the events recently. I think that's a great source to understand what's happening. It really breaks down, okay, what are the layers? It gives some framework on how to understand the quantum world, not just the qubits, but also what are the players, what are the various layers. There's the hardware, there is the software providers, but there is the communities. Gives a lot of reference. So strongly recommended the DWave. I will put the link into the description in a second. But it's really more market oriented than academic, and is this kind of sources, newsletters, and news.
Great, thank you.
And just on top of that, there's a few other sources. If you reach out to me, Cecilia, I can send some through. But there's Quantum Pirates, the Quantum Daily, Quantum Zeitgeist, and more coming all the time as well. So yeah, I'm more than happy to send you some more details over. And Brian has also got some questions about Quantum London's interaction. So Brian, would you like to grab the mic?
Sure, John. I've had the pleasure of working with Anahita and Paulo and Em. And my question was, does Quantum London interact with other quantum meetups around the world, or alternatively, industry associations?
So we are very happy to always interact and collaborate in any way possible with other meetup groups and associations. We do have strong, connections, and we link in with QU India. We've had a few chats with them, and just to meet them, to understand, to be able to share, whether that be content, whether that be interesting things that we find out about them, and we'd really like to take that relationship forward. And we did partner up with CR Partners, who are a consulting firm that have a quantum division, so they focus on quantum computing consulting, and we partnered up with them for a series of events on business implications of quantum. But we are very keen to always expand that network, and definitely open to collaborating with different groups and different associations.
We also supported a couple of the recent events, the Quantum Tech, for example, where media partners there. And something I would like to highlight is, the fact we are in this phase where, yes, there is competition, but it's still getting out of the lab. So there is a lot of collaboration. So it's very easy to build relationships and to get collaboration. So for those, thinking of communities, it's a nice spot right now, because there is a lot of competition, but a lot of collaboration as well. It's quite unique.
And a few of the questions in the chat are sort of verging on the technical side of things. So obviously, I'll just sort of preface that before we go down that route. So, but you guys have got some good, obviously anecdotal understanding from conversations. So hopefully we're not sort of putting anyone out of their depth here. But Doug, obviously, so Doug, you've mentioned questions about blockchain. So would you like to come in and grab the mic?
Hi, it's quite a simple question, really. Do you see any potential for a linkage between quantum and blockchain? I mean, obviously in mining, and secondly also in the cryptography, which is a key part of blockchain. It would seem to me that quantum maybe has a potential to radically improve the usage of blockchain.
So, do you want to go ahead, Em?
Yeah, please feel free to compliment. So this is a recurrent question we get pretty much at every of our open conversations. So the answer I formulated for myself is yes, because the blockchain is based on cryptography. Quantum is a threat to cryptography, so yeah, there's clearly a link there. But there is also quantum is an opportunity for cryptography. So ultimately, as we see, there is people saying, "Oh, blockchain is is going to be disrupted by quantum." At the same time, there's a lot of efforts in parallel trying to build quantum secure algorithms and quantum secure blockchains, right? So yes, there is some trust there, but it's a race between good and evil, and as long as we go hand in hand at the same speed, I think we should be fine. That's the what I've formulated as my thought in the kind of distilling at high level the few conversations we've been having recently.
Yeah,
I think in the with the proof of work, what I see it as, maybe I'm a bit more cynical, but quantum computing, if you had a quantum computer and it was an asymmetrical, power distribution where some people had it and they didn't, then you could speed up that proof of work. Currently I think it's 10 minutes for Bitcoin. That could go down drastically using a quantum computer. So I think there is a slight danger there if there was an asymmetric of people having access and not having access. Having said that, by the nature of how we will access quantum computers, which would be via the cloud for most users, I see less of an argument that there would be only some people being able to access that, unless, of course, there was some sort of state-sponsored effort. But then again, I wouldn't see why they would be wanting to necessarily use that and blow the whistle on the fact that they have this by trying to mine blockchain. They'd probably be using it for other nefarious purposes. But yes, so there is definitely, and there is some security implications, since unfortunately the encryption that does underlying encryption behind blockchain is the kind of encryption that quantum computing can break. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see the positives as well being implemented, and hopefully, as said, if they do work hand in hand, it shouldn't be a problem, because if it is, then it's quite a scary thing of seeing the blockchain fall apart.
I think as well, obviously the offensive and defensive aspects of it that have been brought into play, and potentially some of the ecological issues around blockchain, if you've got a more efficient way of mining that, could be a positive step, particularly with maybe room temperature quantum computers as well. So that may be a possible application moving forward as well. So Sadi has had his hand up for some time. So Sadi, if you'd like to come in as well, please.
Yeah, hi. So I have a comment or a question, let's say. You've been mostly speaking about quantum computers and quantum cryptography. Do you guys do anything around quantum sensing or quantum materials as well? Because yeah, they are exciting and they are the first ones that's gonna be available for us. And at some point they will have to carry quantum computing and cryptography on their shoulders through the quantum winter that might happen. What are you guys doing in this direction, or are you only focused on these two areas?
No, we touched on this a few times. When we talk about quantum, we touched on what you just mentioned. But our focus has been very much on quantum computing. There are so many great groups out there looking at so-called quantum widgets. For us, it's been always a focus on the quantum computing. We touch on it from time to time, but our main focus has been on quantum computing.
Okay, I see the point.
And Mohammed as well has got a quite an interesting take on things. So Mohammed, if you'd like to take the mic. Or I can relay the question. So, again to the panel, since the panel is filled with insurance experts, the question is about how can quantum computing be used to solve the student debt problem? So, a little bit of an unusual question there.
I'm not an expert on the problem itself. I must confess, living abroad, not in the UK. Probably Liana, I will leave this one to you.
Leave it up to me to solve the student debt problem. I don't know. I wish I knew how a quantum computer could be used to solve it. Maybe someone in our community can come up with the solution. Yeah,
we'll put that one out to the wider community.
I don't know, jokes aside, and from the little I know, I think it's a political problem much more than a technology problem, I suspect. Yeah, let's stop there.
We've also had a question from Joseph that I think is a good and an open-ended question. So Joseph, if you'd like to come in. Or I can relay the question. So Joseph was asking what safeguards can be put in place to stop quantum computing being used for nefarious purposes?
It's a very complex question, I think. Also, the way I see it, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but it's a race with the good and the evil, and again, as long as they will go hand in hand, and there's not too much imbalance, we should be fine. In terms of how it should be done, I think there's government and the big companies have a role to play in the space. I think it's kind of similar to what we've seen with the AI, ethics around AI. I think we should start probably having that kind of conversation about quantum computing. And to be honest, we don't see probably enough of it, maybe because the threats are not so perceived as so pressing. Maybe it will come in the next future, but it's something we should be looking at, and I think it's something that should be addressed in the open through the governments in conjunction with the private sector. I think that's the simple answer to a very complex question.
And in terms of things like ethics and governance, the morality behind it, that's something we'll be covering in detail during next week's talk as well. So come back same time next week, and we'll be able to really go to town on those topics. So we also have a question from Amrita. Amrita, would you like to come and join the chat? Come and take the mic and join the discussion.
Hi team. Hopefully I'm audible.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go.
Sure. Yeah, I was having some issues. So I belong to basically a healthcare insurance company. So basically I have some huge experience of working with the healthcare supply chain market, brokers, and the consumer B2B and B2C market. One thing that I really, kind of have started, understanding and reading about quantum like a year back, and trying to find some potential use cases for the healthcare market. One area being fraud detection especially in the claim adjudication area. So we see that, okay, once you provide insurance, so any sort of insurance, whether it is health or any sort of insurance, you come to the company and, you come to the providers and you need to claim for the insurance. So that's where you claim. And there are a lot of cases like, where we see fraud being, done on the claim process. And that basically leads to the, overpayment from the provider perspective. Because sometimes we see that losses of millions and billions of dollars happens due to the overpayment and fraud, because of the frauds in the claim area. That's where I was thinking that is there any sort of potential use cases you people might have came by, or might have thought about in the insurance sector, that how we can deal with with this sort of potential problem. I see many use cases we have this AI potentially giving some of the use cases that how we need to solve this fraud detection in the claims area, but any sort of thing from the quantum area that can be helpful, because actually this volume comes in like literally it comes in like millions. If we go by numbers, it comes in millions, all those frauds in the claim area.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. And with quantum computing in general, the way I kind of think about it is there are 3 problem areas that it can tackle quite well. And those can be divided into optimization problems. So that could be like optimizing a supply chain system or your traffic flow optimization, which can increasingly grow the more sort of the nodes you add into that problem. And then there's simulation, which quantum computing can tackle. That could be, for example, the healthcare industry, simulation of molecules and atoms, or in the chemical industry, simulation of catalysts for processes. And then the third group of problems that quantum computing is great at solving is machine learning problems. And that is essentially related to the fact that for machine learning, you also need to be able to analyze large amounts of data. And so it could really enhance all of the machine learning capabilities that we have today. And within fraud detection, which is a huge area of interest within, I think, most of the insurance industry right now, because that is one, it's a great area of concern for most insurance companies. They are using machine learning to essentially be able to detect patterns of fraud and to flag that up. So where you would have a fraud team as well who would be able to detect something suspicious, for example, a large amount of premium being paid and then the policy cancelled, which is could be a red flag. There is also space for a machine learning algorithm to be able to just sift through many policy documents and detect those and flag them up to a human. Now, machine learning, even though we have great capabilities, we have incredible tools built, there are limitations. It isn't perfect, it isn't great what we're able to do with them. And so I would say that quantum computing could very directly help that problem by being able to improve our capabilities of solving these kind of problems. And it very much falls into the remit of what quantum computing can make better, because it's not the best solution for all the problems, but very specifically for machine learning, it could be an incredible tool.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, in terms of how the sort of the technology and automation technology works hand in hand with the human counterpart. So that's something I'll be fascinated to see develop over time. So you have to keep me in the loop on that one. We've got Joseph asking about how quantum computing will affect individuals searching for work. So whether it'll affect the number of individuals required. So I mean, from my perspective, as someone who recruits into quantum, the more that quantum computing takes off, the more people that my clients will require. So that's one aspect of it. But I think generally with technology, it's the application of technology rather than the technology itself that will define that. So if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, where you had the spinning jenny, the people were sort of smashing the machines, but now we wouldn't function without those machines. So it's the application of how it's used, and to a large extent it's educating the workforce, and work is likely to become more and more fluid, with people having more different jobs, a lot of jobs that don't yet exist. So it's about that retraining and making people prepared for the marketplace that they'll be working in. So I think they're some of the common themes. I don't know whether you guys have sort of thoughts and experience of that from your vantage point as well.
No, I will agree with you, John. I think this is an old problem that comes with every new technology. I'm personally very optimistic. I think the benefits will offset massively, the bad bit. And it's both, new jobs being created in the quantum space. I think that's a very exciting area. for people who want to pursue a career. I think it's a very exciting space to play. And overall, I cannot think a reason why quantum should reduce the jobs we have today. Is an efficiency gain in computation that doesn't convince me. I remain very optimist in the sense that there is much more benefits than there is bad things with quantum.
And I think as well, to sort of just carry that point a little bit further, because the kind of the quantum revolution we're experiencing it pretty much touches on every area of business and essentially life. So I think there'll be so many roles that no one yet can conceive of. There'll be scientific discoveries that are likely, whether it's chemistry, biology, that will create new roles. So it's how that's managed rather than the technology itself. Doug, I think would like to address a question to Anahita. Doug, if you'd like to come back in.
Yeah, I was just listening to Anahita's 3 generic use cases, and I thought, well, don't they all just resolve down to machine learning? Isn't that really the domain of quantum computing? I always try and simplify things as much as I can. That's right.
No, I appreciate that. So I think with simulation, it slightly, for example, falls out of that remit. So when we talk about simulation with quantum computing, that's not necessarily a machine learning problem as far as I understand it. And for example, with systems such as molecules and atoms, because they are inherently quantum mechanical in property, this technology allows us to actually simulate their how they interact with each other a lot easier and fits into that. With machine learning, what it makes a lot easier is when you need to go through the sampling of subsets, and it's because of that increased speed advantage that a quantum computer allows us to have, which is how, as I understand it, that is what helps machine learning in particular. But I think we can, for example, see optimization again is a problem where the area of the problem increases a lot the more factors you put in. So in any sort of optimization problem, when you need to, choose, if you have 10, for example, seats at a wedding and you want to arrange people, and how many ways are there to arrange 10 people? That number is quite large when you think of, 10 factorial. And with optimization problems, that is what they're based on. And when you add another seat to the table, it increases exponentially. So because of the speed advantages, it then helps optimization in that way. Now, optimization might be something that's used in machine learning, but as I see it, there are 2 different problem sets to be solved. If that makes sense, but I'm happy to be.
Sorry, I was just saying, I take your point about simulation. I'm not so sure about the optimization piece. I still think that resolves down to machine learning.
I'm very happy to be challenged on that. Yeah, I can definitely see your point, and I'll have a look at that. Actually, intrigue my interest as well to look at whether it does boil down to the same thing. So thank you.
And I think zooming out slightly as well, and sort of looking at the bigger picture, there's kind of 2 sides at the moment that are very much in focus. You've got the software machine learning algorithm side of things, but then there's also the hardware side of things. So if you take a classic computer, when people code or machine learning code, they don't really consider what's happening, within the physical aspects of that computer. Whereas with quantum computing, it's at this present time, what the state of the qubit is kind of fundamental to how things are programmed. So that's something that comes into play at the moment, as well as having the different styles of technology. So ion traps, superconducting, annealing, and a myriad of others. So those, I think those things will become less clear. And I think when you've got maybe an operating system that can work across different quantum, different qubit technologies and classic computing, and you don't even know the difference between them. That'll be a big, quite a big breakthrough in progressing the discipline. And also when quantum computers are able to create exotic materials that improve the next generation of hardware, that'll then feed back, and you get kind of a cyclical effect that feeds itself. So I'm not sure that necessarily sort of takes machine learning out of the equation, but it just shows that perhaps there are different challenges within the landscape that are tied together, but not necessarily exactly the same thing. We've also, so Doug, we've got another question as well. So please come back in. Okay, so
you said earlier that basically quantum was a cloud offering. I just wondered which providers offer a quantum service. Which would you recommend? Which would you recommend, or which would you say were the leaders in that area?
Well, we can give you a list. I'm not sure who's the best at the moment. Also, slightly different technologies. Some are slightly better in some applications than others, but there's the big players. The first few names we can think of are IBM. I think they were one of the first to not just have it on the cloud, but also to open it up for people to play around. I think they launched a couple of challenges, one per year in the past few years, where you can actually try and challenge yourself to solve some problems, learn at the same time. So IBM is the first one that comes to mind, just because they have this easy accessible toolkit. But also, Google has an offering, Microsoft has an offering, Amazon has an offering, Honeywell, QCware, Xanadu, they're all providing this kind of service. And this is not an exhaustive list. So yes, there's a lot of players. I don't know, maybe you want to say something about the coding community, what they've been using and how they're going.
Yeah, definitely. So just to add on that as well, I think Amazon's a really interesting one, where the other ones, sort of like IBM and Honeywell, they do offer access to their quantum computers because they're building the hardware. So they essentially give access to some of the fleets of the quantum computers they have via the cloud. Amazon, now I think there's been headlines up there thinking of building their own quantum computer, but what they currently do, Amazon Bracket, is they give access. They have a platform to give you access to other people's quantum computers, so you could sort of go there and select which quantum computer you access, which is interesting offering. In terms of the quantum computing coding community that we are running, the format that we've taken up till now is to follow IBM's Qiskit textbook. So IBM have come out with this textbook that essentially is supposed to be able to teach you how to code a quantum computer, and you can also they allow you to connect to the quantum computer. It's for anybody to do that, and within that textbook there are exercises that, for example, might recommend that you try this out. So it's a really incredible way if you're interested. It's difficult, I must say. It's a steep learning curve, but I think that's what's also really nice about the community. I mean, I go through chapters and I have no idea what's going on, but then you come in and then somebody else can explain it to you really easily. So I personally find it really motivating to learn this in a group, especially if it's not your domain, you're not doing a PhD in it, and you want to transfer from maybe another industry to get into quantum computing. It can be maybe challenging doing it on your own in a bit. Well, I find it sometimes disheartening, but it's nice to know other people are struggling on the same things and to be able to work through the problems together.
Right, thank you.
And Joseph's furthered the point around the jobs and really looking to be a little bit more specific, that using quantum computing with Internet of Things and automation may challenge or may cause people to lose jobs. And if you don't mind, if I can start on that. So again, I think these things are possibilities, but again, it all comes down to how these things are used. So with a lot of these activities, so I think generally speaking, with automation, for example, they free up people from repetitive, or the most basic level, free up people from repetitive work. So by freeing that up, actually, then it enables people to do the roles that are more what we would consider fundamentally human, so maybe creativity, strategic, and things like that. So I think that the main challenge is about making sure that the travel of roles is correct. So rather than just automating what comes after that, and again, that comes down to the people behind it. So technology itself is benign. It's neither good nor bad. It's how technology is used, and I think that's the fundamental point. And when it comes to the job market, it will be entirely how it's applied and what benefits are envisaged from that. So I think that's the long and the short of it, and that will always be the case with technology, and has been for hundreds or maybe thousands of years. So I think, and we've got. I think Sadie would like to make another point about the current situation with quantum computing. So Sadie, if you'd like to come in again.
Yeah. So I'm listening today with my new phone, so I'm basically not familiar with what's going on from the infrastructure. Yeah, but about the quantum computing, so I mentioned DWave, which has been in the market and in the game for a very, very long time in comparison to the others, and I really prefer them. I like them because they are, besides the other big giants that are in this game, a little bit less hype driven and more, yeah, they are a good company, I would say. They have cloud-based offerings as well. So that was my point of view about the question, which services can one use?
Yeah, so with DWave, it's interesting as well, because it's debate. Some people sometimes debate whether they're considered quantum compute, what they build are considered quantum computers or not, because they're called quantum annealers, which are very specifically used, I believe, for optimization. Again, problems finding the lowest energy point. So yeah, there is that debate, I think, with DWave. I don't know who started the debate. Maybe another quantum computing company, whether they're considered.
I basically do not support this debate, because all of the kind of qubits that are available are all up to debate. We even don't know which one will be standing on the top at the end, or if any will stand on the top, or will be a hybrid system at the end. This is a question that is open, and basically annealers have been around. Yeah, you're right. And then you touched again with annealers the optimization. So we had a question about optimization. I would like to make a comment on that as well. Optimization is done through machine learning because of the limitation of the bit-based computers. It's not the other way around. So it doesn't mean that if you have enough power to consider different possibilities through a qubit, then you do not need a machine learning algorithm. You can do it straightforward. That's the reason that the optimization issues are not normally put into the same category as machine learning. But also that's a part that is being discussed a lot.
Thank you. That's really great insight, Sada.
Yeah, and I think coming back to the original point, I think there's always going to be debate over qubit technology, and I think that we've seen over the years that different technology seems to be putting away, and then another one comes into play. But during the whole time that I've been working within quantum, which is 7 years, DWave has been the commercial entity that's out there. So I think whatever debate there is around that, they're always going to have a special place in the industry because they have been actually a commercial venture and solving real world problems. Whilst other technology was still in the lab. So I'm certainly not going to be trying to predict the future on in terms of what happens, but I think really I think that has to be a real sort of cornerstone in the marketplace. And my gut feeling is that there's going to be different solutions used for different applications. So you may have an annealing system for one set of problems, or one situation. You may have a photonic processor for another one, and an ion trap or a neutral atom for another one, and superconducting's for a different venture as well. So that's just my 2 cents on it. But I thought, I think DWave do have to be credited for for being pretty much the sole commercial entity in the market, and for so long. So I think that's something that has to be brought into play. And then we've got so Mohammed's also come in and mentioned that the 2008 economic crisis boiled down to banks giving huge loans to people who couldn't afford to pay it back. Since quantum computing can be used for fraud detection, could it be used to sort which financial products are right for individuals, and what those applications may look like?
Yeah, I think, well, from slightly different perspective, right? Portfolio optimization is certainly something which, quantum computing can tackle. So the short answer would be yes, with the right amount of data. I think something that can be addressed. Is when you have a lot of data and a lot of complexity, I think that's where quantum computing can make a difference. So probably short answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that's a nicely put answer there. And we're sort of coming towards time now, and I'd really like to obviously first of all thank the audience for being here, but even more so thank you, Emanuele and Anahita. It's been a great session, and some of the questions that we're moving towards the more technical, I think, were fantastically well answered, as well as the questions that are in your sort of the sweet spot of what you guys are doing. So thank you for everything today. It's been a fascinating discussion.
Thank you very much for having us. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It's a great format as well, which definitely works very well to have it in this open Zoom format. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for that, John, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and I highly recommend seeing what Quantum London are doing, and then their great events that they have. Highly recommended. And then in terms of entangled discussion, so obviously we're on every week. Next week we have the final individual talk of the business aspects of quantum, where Malak Trabelsi-Loeb will be with us, talking about areas including the legal ramifications, governance, compliance, and looking at it from a global perspective as well. So I suspect things like ethics and morality will also come into that. So fascinating, wide-ranging display, and I think something that has an impact on or potential impact on every area of business. So as I say, we're back the same time next week, which is 4:30 British summer time. And the following week we have our entangled discussion, where all of the guests are invited back for what's going to be a really exciting panel discussion. So once again, thank you, Anahita, thank you, Emanuele, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Yeah, good night.